Welcome, welcome. Thank you to this evening's Refuse to Use presentation featuring Paralympian Alicia Dana. Thank you so much to scholars, caring adults, school-based reps, and community stakeholders who have chosen to spend their evening with us on this snowy day. We are grateful for your time and investment in the RTU program and youth in our community. For RTU participants, you know this, but just a reminder, in order for your attendance to be taken, please put your full name, your school, and grade in the chat. This is how your attendance will be taken this evening. You can also use the chat function for any technical questions you may have, or to reach out and ask questions at the end of Alicia's powerful share. For those of you who don't know, my name is Natalie, and I'm the programs coordinator at the collaborative in charge of RTU. I'm joined this evening by my colleagues from the collaborative and West River Valley Thrives, and specifically tonight, Devin and Sam, who are going to be on the technical end of things, and they will both be on the chat and answer any questions that you may have. Now, I invite you to look at question number 3 and consider a time in your life when you've been really challenged and when you've met that challenge and overcome. How did that feel? What did you learn about yourself? I encourage you to think about that as we prepare to listen to Alicia Dana's story this evening. So this is the agenda for this evening. This event will last about an hour. I encourage you to be fully present and here for that time, regardless of what's going on in your life or what pressures you may be under. You just might hear something that really resonates with you this evening. There will be time for questions at the end, but feel free to send them in the chat if you would like. So we always include this, but what does the word dignity mean to you? And why is language and the words that we use so important? Many of you have answered this question during previous lessons, and the responses were absolutely incredible. You talked about respect, respecting people's personhood and their feelings and their boundaries. You talked about dignity and kindness and how human beings are not the labels that we assign to them. So as always, the collaborative includes this slide or something similar to it in every presentation that we do, regardless of the content, to remind us all that the center of the work that we do are human beings who all deserve dignity and respect. By putting humans at the center of all that we do and all that we say, we mitigate the damage that shame and stigma can cause. We offer grace to those who are struggling and make it easier to reach out for help. And if you make a mistake, it's totally fine. Ask questions. That's how we learn. We all have the ability to make a difference, starting with what we say and how we speak about the world around us. So, on to the main portion of this event. Alicia is going to tell her own story in her own words tonight, powerful words. But I just have to say, in the few times that I've met with her virtually, I've been struck by her humility and willingness to completely step outside of her comfort zone this evening and share her experiences with us. You are an example, and we are so grateful to have you with us here tonight. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now as we listen to Alicia's words. And then after she's done speaking for a time, we're going to be able to look at some really amazing pictures as she walks us through them. So without further ado, Alicia.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, Natalie, for asking. It's really an honor to be asked to speak to all of you. And I haven't done this much. It was hard to piece together my story in a way that hopefully sustains your interest and tells as full a version as possible. I hope it's entertaining enough and that you find something of value in it. So we all face challenges in life. It's part of being human. Whether they're more visible and on the surface or hidden from others, they're inevitable. My own challenges have felt insurmountable at times, and yet here I am. Somehow, I truly believe there's always a way through. My background is that I grew up in Putney, the youngest of 5, in a very outdoorsy and athletic family. We were big skiers, and I competed from the age of 5 in Nordic and alpine skiing. As a teenager, I became passionate about cycling and started bike racing and riding pretty seriously. Being an athlete helped me to cope psychologically and emotionally with being an adolescent. It gave me a sense of identity and purpose. It was a thing I could focus on and get excited about outside of school and my peers. I liked that I could put work in and results athletically in terms of strength, speed, and endurance, physically and emotionally. It gave me increased energy and improved my mood and self confidence. I did well and had placed in the top 10 nationally for 2 seasons by the start of my senior year in high school at the Putney School. That fall, this was 1986, I was feeling pretty confident, perhaps overly so in that way that a teenager can sometimes misjudge themselves. I had a boyfriend who adored me. I was fit and strong. I was finally a senior. I had goals. A few days before school started, I was hanging out with friends on a hillside on campus. I climbed a tree and was 40 feet high in the branches when a limb broke and I fell, landing flat on my back on the ground below. Instantly, I could no longer feel or move anything below my waist. Beyond the considerable pain of my broken spine, the dawning realization that I was paralyzed became almost unbearable. My life trajectory, who I thought I was and had worked so hard to become, was overturned in an instant. I would need to rediscover everything and remake who I was. I would have to find something else to care about, to do, to apply myself towards, with the same creative energy I'd had for cycling. If there even was such a thing, I didn't know. But what lay immediately before me was a very long, unknown road. I spent that fall of my senior year in the hospital learning to get around in a wheelchair, doing physical therapy, adapting to life as a person with a disability. I was discharged after a couple of short months and returned to the Putney School campus to finish the school year. This was one of the hardest periods of time for me in my now over 3 decades in a wheelchair. The campus was far from wheelchair accessible, on top of which it was a particularly snowy winter. Temporary plywood ramps had been put in for me into the main buildings on campus, but navigating around was beyond difficult. I relied heavily on a few close friends to help me get to my classes and lunch. They were young too, though, and sometimes I was left somewhere alone and stuck. Asking for help was a skill I hadn't developed yet. Having been a strong, athletic, independent person up until then, as well as somewhat shy and socially awkward, it was a muscle I hadn't used very much, nor did I want to. But circumstances now required that I learn to use the people around me, whoever they may be, to help me get where I needed to go. A small freshman boy who I barely knew, for example, courageously pushed me up a steep, snowy slope. Almost to the top, he slipped, and we both tumbled all the way back down to the bottom. A student of color from the inner city piggybacked me up a steep flight of stairs every day so I could do my work job. There are many more examples like this. Suffice it to say, I began to open myself up to people I would not have normally interacted with in a way that felt vulnerable, awkward, physically risky. But that also opened up new vistas for me, socially and emotionally. I was learning to ask for help, an important skill I still am not great at, but one that I think of as my superpower. The sheer number of everyday people who have helped me in some way, small or large, over these past 3.5 decades of being disabled is kind of mind-boggling. If there's a hidden gift to disability, I feel this may be it. Having to reach outside of one's comfort zone to connect to and collaborate with a larger swath of humanity than one normally would, from simply needing help, has led to probably thousands of interactions of goodwill from perfect strangers. As I said in the beginning, somehow there's always a way through. Anyway, after I graduated from Putney, I decided to move to Miami, Florida for a year, where I felt I could learn to live independently, where it was warm, flat, and wheelchair accessible. This was the late 80s, and adaptive sports hadn't yet reached the level of development that there is today. The number of different sports available, the number of people involved in them, the equipment, the competitions and events were all fewer and harder to come by than they are today. I started my first adaptive sport in Miami, wheelchair racing. I had made contact with a group of other wheelchair users, got a racing chair and entered local races, including the Orange Bowl Marathon. It felt great to have that athletic outlet and to meet other people in chairs. Hand cycles weren't really on the scene yet, and it wasn't for another 5 years or so before I spotted my first one while on a trip out west in Eugene, Oregon. As soon as I saw it, I absolutely had to have a hand cycle. When I finally got it, there must have been a permanent grin on my face every time I rode, which was often. Finally, I was able to do the sport that I had loved, though in a slightly different form. The feeling was like freedom, being able to push myself athletically with a full set of gears, up and down hills, along my old cycling routes. I felt that a lost part of me was able to reappear. It wasn't the same as having my legs back and cycling, but it was a way to make the most of what I had. And having that potential again to grow athletically, to develop speed, muscle, endurance, power, that was beyond great. Back then I rode by myself, and simply because I loved it and it made me feel good. There were no races and no other hand cyclists that I knew. A few years later, though, while I was in college in Rhode Island, I met a fellow hand cyclist who I then reconnected with after I graduated over an idea I had to ride across the country. The two of us networked with some other cyclists and hand cyclists she knew to form a small group. The Ride to Provide happened in 2000. We rode from Washington to Vermont in 2 months, in the process raising funds for a couple of nonprofit disability-related causes. By the end of that ride, I had built up a solid base of endurance and strength. Sarah, the other hand cyclist I'd mainly ridden with, told me that there were, in fact, a series of hand cycling races, and only one other woman who was doing them. She encouraged me to start racing, and 14 years after my last bike race, I found my way to my first hand cycle race in Colorado. I became a member of the national paracycling team that year and competed in my first world championships in Germany. My results weren't impressive, but it was thrilling to be bike racing again. I was also becoming familiar with a whole new community of peers, athletes with physical disabilities of all kinds. Paracycling is a sport in which adaptations are made to allow a disabled person to ride a bike. For me, I ride a hand cycle, an arm-powered 3-wheeled cycle. There are athletes with limb deficiencies who ride regular 2-wheeled upright bikes, MS or traumatic brain injured athletes with compromised balance who race trikes, etc. Each type of disability competes in a separate category, but we're all paracyclists. For those who may not be aware, which is easy as parasports remain on the periphery of any kind of publicity, the same kinds of classifications and adaptations exist for people with disabilities to participate in many different kinds of sports. The Paralympic Games hosts 22 different summer sports and 6 winter sports every 2 years. Back to my story. Around this time, I got married. A year later, I gave birth to my daughter, Willa, and a year after that, I was separated and then divorced from my husband. What followed was a period of about 8 years when I rode very little, coping with being a first-time mother, a single mother, and in a wheelchair altogether made for some tough years. I was merely trying to get through each day, and any larger plans were inconceivable. I felt immersed in survival, with my daughter's well-being my only focus. I tried various part-time jobs, but nothing really stuck, and I wasn't terribly happy. Then one day, a fellow wheelchair athlete called me up out of the blue and encouraged me to enter the Vermont City Marathon. It was just the invitation I needed to get back on my bike. I did the race, finished well, and felt that old competitive bug and thrill of racing enter my system again. A few weeks later, I found myself in Augusta, Georgia for the US Paracycling National Championships. Re-entering the field of competition after nearly a decade off was a huge wake-up call. The equipment had evolved dramatically and my hand cycle was far outdated. I hadn't really trained, and now it appeared that was what everyone was doing. A huge influx of injured veterans from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan had greatly enlarged the field of competitors. Hand cycling was a real sport now, and the bar was high. Needless to say, I was beaten soundly by everyone. It was humbling to be last in a race. That had never happened to me before. Now I had a bar to reach, a challenge to meet. My pride, I suppose, had been injured, but more so, I was excited and inspired to try to meet the new level of excellence that I'd witnessed. And my new goal is once again to make the national team. Back at home, I kept training on my old dinosaur of a hand cycle. It was the only equipment I had. A newer, faster racing hand cycle was far beyond my means. And I had no idea how I was going to come up with that needed equipment. Then I was out for a training ride one day when I got a flat tire. A friend picked me up and gave me a ride home, and I stashed my hand cycle in the tall grass to come back later and pick it up. But when I came back, it was gone. Someone had stolen it. This major setback, astonishingly, turned into a gift in disguise, as my community rallied to raise funds for me to buy the latest carbon fiber racing hand cycle. It was an overwhelming show of community support and the linchpin in my drive to be once again a competitive athlete. Around this time, I borrowed a hand cycle and went with my father to the White Mountains for an organized weekend century ride, which is 100 miles. My father had always been a huge supporter of all of us kids in our athletic pursuits and was a skier and cyclist himself. That love and support was 100% behind me and my hand cycling as well. Though 80 years old by now, he wasn't going to pass up this opportunity to ride with me and support me. On the second day of our ride, we separated ourselves from the group, as I had wanted to do a slightly different route than was planned. Pop was mostly following me in his truck, but he also had his bike in the back. That late afternoon, we rode together up over a mountain pass. His truck was parked at the top, and as I passed him and went down the other side, I knew he'd load up and follow me, appearing every mile or two the rest of the way back, cheering me on as he had been doing all weekend. But time went on and I didn't see him. I had already ridden 60 miles and had some 15 to go before the end of the route, so it was all I could do to stay focused on just keeping the pedals moving around. Still, I couldn't help but wonder where he was. As time went by and he still didn't appear, I grew more and more worried. But Pop always came through. He was that kind of guy. He must have had some sort of mechanical problem, I told myself. But my strange worry only grew. My worst fears were confirmed in what became a traumatic series of events. Pop had suffered a cardiac arrest at the top of the pass. He was found in the driver's seat of his truck, his bike loaded in back, the keys in his hand, ready to come follow me and support me, just like he had always done. As crazy as it sounds, a week later, I found myself in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center for a development race camp, a pipeline to qualifying for the national team. I had just lost both my hand cycle and my father while pursuing my hopes and dreams. But this camp was a step in the process forward, and I knew Pop would have wanted me to be there. On yet another borrowed hand cycle and grieving, I did daily training rides and learned the basics of training and racing in this new era of the sport. Fast forward, today I'm an elite level hand cyclist on the US Paralympic cycling national team. I've been on the team for the past 10 years, first qualifying just in time for the 2012 Paralympic Games in London. Over the past decade of racing and training, I've competed in and medaled at 3 Paralympic Games, multiple World Cups, World Championships, National Championships, and many other races. I'm also the captain of an all-female hand cycling team through the Challenged Athletes Foundation. My daughter Willa is now 18 years old and doing very well. None of this has been easy, but it has all been worth it. The lessons I've had to learn, the people I've met, the places I've been, have made for some incredibly valuable and unique experiences. Throughout, being a competitive hand cyclist at the highest level has given me certain benefits that have carried over into my life in general and helped me to grow and develop into a stronger, more capable and durable human being. Looking back, for example, that first national championships race after having taken 8 years off was a key moment. I was soundly beaten by the entire field in a sport that I had considered to be my sport and one I had excelled at. This was a moment when I realized I'd have to really work hard to achieve something I cared about, but that I would have to put in the work and that it wouldn't be easy. The training itself has been a real learning process. The repetitive act of putting in hard work over time. I haven't always been consistent in my training, but when I am, it shows in my results. What I put in is what I get out. As simple as that may sound, it's nonetheless a constant challenge to orient my daily life toward the achievement of doing the work. Most of the year, I do this work alone on my trainer in my garage during the winter and out on the roads in the warmer months. For a few short months in the summer during race season, I get to actualize all those hours of solitary labor in the company of other hand cyclists on the race scene, both domestically and internationally. That's when I have the chance to bring all of my learning, training, and experience, physical and mental, to the test. It's exciting, excruciating, and always leaves me with more work to do and another challenge to meet. And always, the gifts of others help keep me going, inspired, and supported. Other athletes I learn from, my coach, my team, my friends, my family, even perfect strangers. It's up to me to do the work and to show up, to put in the hours of effort. It's not easy and I don't always do it well or completely. But the way forward, through whatever challenges I face, is continuing to apply the energy and effort in a consistent way over time. Asking for and accepting help where needed is also critical to my success. I've learned in the process that I can achieve far more than I ever thought myself capable of, and I believe this is true for all of us. All we need is a plan, a goal, a dream, and the willingness to put in consistent effort over time. I think there's a sort of magic in that combination of imagination and hard work. The universe then can somehow provide us a path through. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen again. Okay, so thank you so much I can't believe that is the first time that you've really shared your story. So now Alicia's going to help walk us through some really powerful photographs right now. So when you want me to switch, just tell me to go on to the next slide.
Okay, yeah, these will be all fairly rapid, I think, but I just kind of wanted to give a little, from the very beginning. So this is me and my siblings. I'm the littlest one on the left there, number 61, growing up ski racing. Okay. And this is a picture of my father on the left supporting me in one of my very first bike races as a teenager. So I just wanted to include this slide because it illustrates, that he was right there all the time, just, running alongside the road with a water bottle, cheering me on, and having that support from him has been tremendous. Having anybody in your life, you know, who believes in you and wants to see you succeed is just such a huge gift. Okay. This was one of my early successes in able-bodied bike racing as a teenager at a race in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I had that early experience of working hard and winning and having that positive experience with athletic competition. And I think that that has really been such a huge gift for me in dealing with all the challenges that I've had to overcome since then. This is after my accident, age 17, the 80s, you could tell by the stonewashed jeans, being let out of rehab, heading home.
I can't marvel enough at this picture and how so much was unknown, but your hat's backwards, you're wearing your acid wash jeans, like,
I have a smile on my face.
yep.
You know, I just, yeah, that kind of blows my mind too. I think, you know, there's a certain wonderful thing about being young and not knowing. You know, ignorance is bliss. I was just still kind of in the moment, and I think I really was okay. I really was okay. I didn't always feel that way, but
Yeah.
oh, so this is the very tail end of that ride across the country that I mentioned, the Ride to Provide. We finally got into, this is downtown Brattleboro, I think. But my father, that's him behind my left shoulder, and his friend met me. Oh, and I also want to include that picture and this one because it shows you the old style hand cycle. That's from the 80s. So that's like, or 90s, sorry, early 2000. It's totally outdated now, but you're like sitting up like that. So, because later on I'll show you the more recent ones. And that's one of the first rides I did after Willa, you know, was when Willa was little. Like I said, I really didn't ride much during that period of time at all, but I just wanted to show that one shot. So this is the Olympic Training Center. Just wanted to show, this is the bike room. These are some of the newer hand cycles that are out there. And this is my very first domestic win. So by domestic, I mean a race in the United States. And this was a national championships event. And the woman in the rainbow jersey, Muffy Davis, was a big hero of mine and inspiration. She was one of the only two really other female hand cyclists who were strong and fast. And I never ever thought I could beat Muffy, but this day I finally did. And that was a huge triumph for me. And this was the day of my very first international victory. It was a World Cup race in 2014, I believe, in Segovia, Spain. So I just wanted to show this shot because it shows some of my other Team USA teammates as well. Yeah, in wheelchairs, and the ones in back have various other types of disabilities. One of them is a single leg amputee. One of them is a stroke survivor. The other one had cancer and has part of her leg amputated. And that was my first win in Segovia. So on the world stage, having been on the national team now for 3 years, to finally be able to win a race was just incredibly affirming of all the hard work that I've been putting in. And I just wanted to include this picture because these are a couple of fellow female hand cyclists from other countries. It's Karen Dark from Great Britain and Renata from Poland. They were my biggest competition, the two of them, for a couple of years. Now there's some other ones in the mix too, but it's just such a wonderful thing to find this community of other female hand cyclists from all over the world. I love to race, but I also just really get so much out of being part of the community. And, you know, most of them all speak English, fortunately. So when we do go to races in other countries, we can converse, and it's just, I don't know, it's inspiring. Because here in rural Vermont, you know, I really don't see anybody who looks like me very much at all, if ever. And suddenly there I am in a place where there's all these strong, fast female hand cyclists in wheelchairs. And I'm just so, I don't know, there's something just thrilling about kind of finding your people. So. And this is just, this is from the World Championships in the United States. They're almost never in the US, so this was a big deal in 2014. The World Championships, so there's a series of World Cup races that happen every season, and then World Championships are kind of like the more, you know, special event, and those happen every year too, towards the end of the season. So this year they were in Greenville, South Carolina. And I won. That's my gold medal for winning the time trial in the World Championship. So, and that rainbow jersey is an iconic jersey for, it marks that you're world champion, and it's a very coveted jersey. This is my relay team. So in hand cycling, we have a individual time trial, we have a road race, and then we also have a team relay, which sometimes I'm able to be on and sometimes I'm not. It depends on different things. But this particular event, the US was able to have two different relay teams. There's 3 members on a team. So those 3 guys on the left were on the A team actually, and me and 2 others were on the B team. But we actually beat the A team. So that was pretty awesome. And yeah, just a shot to kind of show this guy, Freddie, who's in the kneeler. He's a kneeling hand cycle. That's the kind where you sit up more like that. He's a single leg amputee, veteran. These guys are all veterans, war vets. But because Freddie can use his entire upper body, like he's not paralyzed, it's just a limb deficiency. He's able to ride this other style of hand cycle where he can like lean over and use his whole upper body in the stroke. So one year my daughter was able to come to our World Championships. This year they were in Switzerland. It was 2015, I think. So my mom and sister flew over with Willa, and that was just such a thrill for her to be able to be at one of these international races, because I travel with the US team, and unfortunately they don't allow friends or family to travel with us. So the fact that my mom and sister were able to come over and bring her along was just really super meaningful. This is a shot from our trials, our Paralympic trials for Tokyo, which was last summer in Minneapolis. And so it was a time trial event, which is why I'm wearing the aerodynamic helmet. And yeah, I did pretty well. I mean, I did well enough to make the Tokyo team, so that was great. And then here I am competing in Tokyo in the time trial. Or maybe this is the road race, I'm not sure. And then this is podium for the road race. I was bronze. So the woman in the middle, Jeanette Jansen from the Netherlands, was gold, and then Annika from Germany was silver, and I was bronze. We were all very close to each other. It wasn't till the very end that that Jeanette really took off, and she has a very strong sprint. And Annika and I were much closer together. I was having a hard time making this very sharp left at the top of a climb. And then before you get to the straightaway, and she managed to pull away from me there. And then she also has a strong sprint. So she got ahead of me, but it was a good race. And then these are a couple of this is in the pits at the speedway where the races were held, the Fuji International Speedway. And so it's, car racing. So they have these pits, and that's where we always set up with all our mechanics and nutritionists and coaches and all the athletes. And so this was after the medal ceremony. And these two guys, Jim and Mike, are a couple of the team coaches, and they just helped me out in so many different ways. And yeah, it really takes a team to make it all happen. I was super grateful for these guys' help. And this is a short video showing this all-female hand cycling team that I'm a part of. And we're all different levels of kind of seriousness with the sport, but we all go to races just domestically and have a great time together. And it's a really important team because women are very underrepresented in this sport. And for a long time, I felt like I was, just completely on my own, just me and the guys. But fortunately, this team was formed just a couple of years ago by a guy named Carlos. He's a former Navy SEAL who was shot down, and he's paraplegic as well, and a super athlete. And he was past his competition years and just wanted to do something to help further the cause of women in the sport. So he formed this team, and I got on it. I asked him, I said, Carlos, please, I've got to be on this team. And so, yeah, he let me be on it. And now I'm team captain, and he's actually moving on and doing other things. So I have a feeling this season I'm going to be doing a lot more with this team. But it's just awesome to have these gals as teammates. So in this video, we'll give you a little sense of what racing looks like too.
Sports does not care if you're paralyzed. It does not care if you're blind, if you're missing a limb. It just wants you to be in it.
Sports became my therapy, and I think in a lot of ways it's like a very healthy outlet. Everybody was so supportive and just encouraging me to keep on it as long as I enjoyed it, and so far it's been an amazing journey.
It gives you this sense of empowerment and independence and freedom, which when you live your life in a wheelchair, to me personally was a lifesaver. It's very satisfying to see that there is this solid base of female hand cyclists.
I'm super excited to be a part of Challenge Athletes Foundation's first ever women's team.
I would love to see this team continue to develop, to get stronger, to attract more women into the sport. I'm thinking not just locally, but internationally, it would be wonderful to be cultivating that presence of really strong female American hand cyclists on the international stage as well.
There's nothing more powerful than a determined group of females supporting each other, coming together and being around like-minded people who have similar challenges is life-changing.
That's helping me kind of heal this younger part of myself that I felt like at the time I never really had anybody to share that with.
It's just one big family. I feel like everybody's just there to help each other meet their goals.
We really focus on selflessness, sacrifice and sportsmanship. That's the three main things that we want to bring to this team.
I really have so much gratitude towards the Challenge Athletes Foundation because it's just really important after an injury like this to have tiny goals, large goals.
They've made such a difference in my life since my injury. Without Challenge Athletes Foundation, I wouldn't have been able to race nearly as much as I have this year.
My goals for tonight's race is to just get out there, be strong, and put in the work and help my team cross the finish line.
We've had a lot of practice, drafting off of each other, and I just love the strategy part of it too.
It's challenging and it's hard, but it's the kind of thing I love to do.
I'm so excited to be competing in the Twilight Criterium.
Everybody played their part. I feel like it was really good.
It was fun to kind of work with my teammates and let them get a little bit of experience.
It was a lot more fun working as a team.
Good to have fun and spread the love of adaptive sports at the same time.
Wow. Thank you so much, Alicia, for sharing your powerful story of hope and resilience and so much of what human beings are capable of. And I love how you talked about just the power of having someone believe in you deeply and then that transferring to being able to believe in yourself deeply. So thank you for that powerful reminder. So I'm going to give participants time now to send in questions in the chat if they have them, but also please remember that this does serve as the final event for the RTU winter season. Stay tuned for spring and summer programming, and please make sure that you have put your full name, school, and grade in the chat. Again, that's how you are going to get credit for attending this evening. And if you have any work to make up for RTU this year, anything that you need can be found on the RTU website. We want to thank our community partners, West River Valley Thrives, Stratton Mountain, Magic Mountain, Viking Nordic, and Riley Rink for their continued support and investment in the health and well-being of our community. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and Devin is going to sort of send out some questions if we have them.
You got one question that says, what advice would you give young people our age?
Oh, that's a hard one.
What advice? Well, by our age, I'm thinking like just teenagers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and my daughter's 18 now, so I think that's part of why I balk, because every time I try and give her advice, she's like, no, Mom, I got this, like,
Yeah.
like, but just, I don't know, believe in yourself. It sounds like a cliche, but it is so true. Like, I think being a teenager is a time when you really are figuring out who you are and who your people are and where you're going, what you want to do. And I guess my advice is to, seek that out. Find the people that are going to support you and believe in you and be there for you. And don't bother with the rest. And listen to yourself in terms of who you think you are and want to be. Dream big. Know that you might not know how the heck you're going to get there right now, but it is possible to get there if you just keep putting one foot forward, finding the resources, asking for help, moving in that direction, and take care of yourself. You're special and important and precious and needed. So eat your vegetables.
Eat your vegetables. Get good rest.
Get good rest. Drink lots of water. Do stuff outside that makes you sweat.
Yeah. And find something that you're passionate about. One of the things that we talk about at the collaborative is that natural high that you can get from finding just absolute mindful presence in what you're doing and doing something that you love. And it sounds like you found that in hand cycling.
Yeah.
Really
it can be anything. It could be maybe you love just cleaning the house, or I don't know, some little hobby or something. I don't know, to find things to keep you happy and sane and just keep doing them.
Awesome. One student asked, they want to know how fast you can go on your hand cycle.
Oh, that's a good one.
The fastest I've gone, it's actually really fast on descents because it's very aerodynamic. We're practically lying down, so we're not very far off the ground. So on downhills, it can go pretty fast. I've gotten up to like 50, but only for a second or two. I mean, usually in races, because there'll be, some sharp turn at the bottom or whatever, you have to, I'll go up to somewhere between 45 and 48 or something like that at the fastest.
Nice. Another question is, would you change anything in your life?
Would I change anything in my life? Yeah, I think I would if I could. I mean, yes and no. It's sort of like I wish I could go back and, not make all the mistakes that I've made. On the other hand, I feel like mistakes are exactly how we learn things, as hard as a lesson as that can be. So I don't really regret in that sense. But yeah, I can't help but think about, geez, if I hadn't climbed that tree that day and fallen out and gotten paralyzed, what would my life be like? If I could have been able-bodied all these 3.5 decades. I don't know, honestly, looking back, if I did have the opportunity to change that, if I would. I think it's brought me a lot of lessons and it's made me who I am. So in that sense, I value the experience it's given me.
Yeah. And thank you so much for really pointing out that it's not what happened to you, right? Because it was indeed horrific, right? But it's what you were able to do, what you chose to do with that for the rest of your life that has sort of created such an amazing and powerful story. And I have a question. What's on the horizon? What's next? What's coming up?
Yeah, I wasn't sure after Tokyo if I was going to continue racing, but I've decided to do that at least for another year. So I've been training, and I've got a couple training camps coming up in March, and one in Arizona and one in Southern California. The first one is with the women's hand cycling team, so I get to see all those gals again. And then the second one is with the national team. So I'm really looking forward to getting out of the snow and being able to ride on the roads for a couple of weeks. And then we have a big race in April down in Alabama. That's a selection event for the first World Cups of the season. So I'm hoping to get myself in good enough shape by April to do well in that event.
Right
I
on.
have another question. Is hands cycling harder than regular cycling?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, they're both as hard as you make them. Like, it depends on how hard you want to work, right? You know, you push harder, you go faster, or you could just take a nice little easy spin. And that holds for whether you're on a bike or on a hand cycle. But things that are harder, I think, about being on a hand cycle, number one, you know, your arms are not as strong as your legs. So you can't put out the same kind of power that a regular cyclist would. Some other things that are hard are once you're on it, like if you get a flat tire, you need to stop, you know, you can't just get off of it and like walk your bike somewhere. You know, once you're on it, you're kind of stuck on it. So you need to think ahead and plan ahead for rides. And, you know, I just bring my cell phone with me in case something happens. I need to get some help. There's a lot of just sort of logistical things that are hard about being on it. Another thing that's challenging is that it's so low to the ground that cars don't see you as well. So it feels sort of dangerous. And so I ride with like a big, huge orange flag, and I've got a really super bright bike light on the back as well. So. Yeah.
Awesome. It's so remarkable. If there are any more questions, you can feel free to reach out to me at the collaborative. And Alicia, if folks want to follow you or sort of check up on you, is there any way that they can do that?
Yeah, I've got a Facebook page, athlete page, and then I'm also on Instagram. So the Facebook is just Alicia Dana. And then Instagram, I'm like Alicia Dana 8, I think, at Alicia Dana 8.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, if you want to follow Alicia or ask any questions, you can reach out in that way or reach out to the collaborative. And I just want to extend sincere appreciation to you, Alicia, for being with us tonight, for this being the final culminating event for Refuse to Use this year, and sharing your powerful story, and not only sharing it, but sharing it for the first time in front of over 50 screens this evening. Thank you so much. This is the last event of the RTU 2021-2022 season. Congratulations to all of you. If you have finished all of your work, stay tuned for more information about spring and summer programming. We are so, so grateful for your participation in this program. Thank you again to Alicia, all our community stakeholders, all of our school-based reps, caring adults, but most of all, thank you to you young people for being a part of this program and for making our community better just by speaking your capital T truth every single day and sharing your stories like Alicia did tonight. Have a wonderful evening and stay safe. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay out.